situations that we have had to deal with. So before we start with our I'm on the board, now what do I do? I would like us who are here together in common fellowship to make democracy work for everyone, take some time to recognize the despair and oppression of many of our fellows. It isn't just one thing that is troubling, it is many. The advantage of the League is that we work in so many areas: democracy, healthcare, equity, income, education, so many, that there's a place for you to go from it's too much, it's overwhelming, to, oh, I can do one thing and be joined by others who share my concern and my energy. With some of the issues, we will not and should not be in the lead. With others, we will be. I want you to know that the state board members are reaching out to leaders in organizations whose main mission is to end racism, to see what could best be done by the League of Women Voters of Washington. We'll keep you informed of what develops, and also know that we are working in many, many areas. We have important work to do, both immediate and long-term, and we're grateful that you're here. And so many people are spending so much time going through these almost orientation materials and discussion materials. So we're really grateful to have all 60 of you and counting. It's hard not to see you in person and to hug and hello and get to know you individually. And I'm hoping that that we'll be able to continue to foster relationships. Someone is asking everyone to adjust their camera so that their face is in the middle of the screen. I think I'm close, so.
You're good.
So there we have it. Anyway, if you would advance the slide one, Marty. Linda Benson and I are going to talk to you about three things: what to know, where to find it, and just some concepts about leadership, tasks, and relationships. And Linda is here because she's a really great facilitator, and she is a really great president of a local league, and that's experience that you just can't get just off the shelf. And so she's going to do some part of this presentation too. Marty, next slide, please. There is more to know than I know, or many of the people in the room know. And I just want to kind of leave you almost with laundry lists of things to go back to, because it is so important that you have some kind of grounding in the materials that we have. So being clear about what we're about, making democracy work, being clear about what our goals are, your goals are, and having a plan to reach those. And as you know, in the League, there are so many things to do that it sometimes is helpful to just say, you know, if I could just get these three things done this year, it would be a wonderful thing. So, so that's where I would kind of start, is for you to be clear on what your goals are and how they relate to your local league, and then move on from there. Next slide, please. So here's some more lists of things that you can take a look at. I'm not really going to do an interpretive reading of the PowerPoint slides, but I do want to call your attention to some of the things that you really and truly should know about, which are websites, both the local, state, and national, LWV, the publications. You know, we've been around 100 years, some of us almost personally, and that's a joke. And the point is, we have achieved an awful lot and done an awful lot of things. So sometimes just because you haven't done it doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't done it. And my league sisters and I, and some of my brothers, are forever, well, this was done in 1952 and it might relate here. So take a look at those publications. Don't be thrown off by the copyright. Also want you to know some of the local leagues have directors and officers insurance, which means if you do something wrong, your insurance company can provide some support for lawyer support and that sort of thing. So that's what D&O insurance is. And some people, when they join a board, want to know if you have D&O insurance. Take a look at your financials. I'm forever flogging the let's look at the financials and are we in trouble or not band drum, because it's just something that you really have to understand. And it's not scary. There's numbers, there's 10 of them. How could it be that hard? Well, sometimes it is, but we always want to make sure that we've got the finances right, that we can actually support the things that we're doing. So that's a real important piece for you to take a look at. Your strategic plan or some kind of direction of where are you going, what are your goals, and how the strategy about how to get to it. So these are all things that you should make available to yourself and paw through, not because you're going to remember all of it, but because you're going to know, oh, somewhere I saw that, somewhere I know where that is. So, and somebody is asking me how COVID-19 affected the financial outlook for the league. We are not in bad shape. We are not in bad shape. We're not in great shape, but you know, we're a frugal bunch of people and we don't spend money foolishly. And so we are in a lot better shape than other people are. In fact, we were just recently able to make some projections about moving forward. So we're good with staff and we're good with the technology that we're taking advantage of right now. Next slide, please. General board responsibilities. The fiduciary one, it's in your care. And sometimes that's really hard to think about. It's like, oh, who should I call about this? Oh, I'm the person I should call. So you can get help and advice, but really the fiduciary responsibility, you're holding the baby, and that's kind of a big job and to be taken very seriously. And sometimes people who don't realize how serious that is have great ideas for how you could spend your time and your money, and then you have to come back and say, does this really make sense for us? So the fiduciary responsibility is huge. You also represent a link to the community. So you are, if you're on the board, especially, and if you're a member otherwise, but you are who your community thinks of when they think of the League of Women Voters. And that's why it's so important to be careful about what you say. I tend to be kind of off the cuff, and that's something that I really think about because when you're in a leadership position, for some reason, people take you more seriously than they otherwise would. And so you're linked to the community. What you say, because you will be quoted and you will be misquoted, I can guarantee you that. So what you represent to the community is the voice of the league, especially if you're the president or on the board. So that connection is very important, because especially as we talk about equity, we need to make sure that we have been clear with our support for all of the communities that we might serve. And so that's pretty crucial. And then plan an annual meeting and a program planning meeting each year. So you got to figure out how you're going to get everybody together and understand what it is that their interests are and what they're committed to. And that ends up being your program. And we mean program differently than we're having a ballet program. Some people don't understand that program of work is like, what studies are we going to undertake? And what's the real work that we're going to do this year? And I think that sometimes people don't quite understand that, but your annual meeting is sort of what sets you off. And then you have a plan in order to carry that out. So that's all you have to do. You know, the rest is just put up your feet, right? That takes a lot. I'll take the next slide, Marty. So this is the interpretive reading of what to look for on the website. And I've asked Marty, because I asked him to do everything, to please make slides of the actual website so that if you click forward, you can see that we have the contents at wa.org and just lwv.org. There's home, but there's a section for advocacy. That's all of our C4 work. There's places to find resources. There's about us, who we happen to be and who we are. There's a section just for members. There's an area for getting involved. Voter tools, that's our C3 activity, events, and an opportunity to donate. Next slide, please. This is coming up on the home slide, and this is, if you are online now, you can look at it yourself, but home is where it happens. So that's one place that you go to just start out looking around. Then the next one is getting involved, and you can see as those drop down, the different things that you can click on to get more information about. Advocacy, let's take a look at that. Next slide. So that would be all of the things. There's going to be some sessions on advocacy later in the week. And this is sort of home base for them. And there's a ton of stuff that you can find out about in what people are doing legislatively. Next, please. Voter tools. Oh my gosh. Mary Coltrane is the voter services champion for the league, and you heard Vote 411 last night, I believe, or whatever day it is. Anyway, you heard her talk about this. She has a group of people also who are working on the statewide offices that we're going to have in the November election and in the primary, and they are deciding, how to do the forums and making arrangements for what if we have to do them online and what if we can do them in person. And she's networking with all of the local leagues to see, who wants to host what, where. We're co-sponsoring with the Spokesman Review, who many of you saw last year at convention and said to me, we got to get them back. We got to have a relationship with them. So we do. And a number of other television stations that'll be hosted on television and in public broadcasting and on TVW. So there's a lot of work involved in that. And also the Vote 411, is, who's your candidate and what questions do you have? So they do a lot of work statewide, but they do a lot of support for local leagues. The next one, Marty, is find resources, toolkits for action, studies and reports, books, studies and reports. You know that the reason that we can say we're in favor of XYZ is because we studied it. And that doesn't mean we just looked around at stuff. There's an actual format for how do you do a study, and then we come to consensus on it, and then it becomes part of our legislative, what we use to substantiate our legislative positions. So this is where they are. After that is events. This is an event. After that is about us, mission, vision, what we do, leadership and staff, our history. That's kind of a rich area. Next is donate. You can fill that one out later. Actually, our members are generous and we really appreciate that. And we send that right back out to you, either in local support or in statewide support, so that we can do the things that you tell us that you would like to have done. Not you individually, but you collectively. And finally, here it is for members, your state league information. So this is where you have to be a member to get into. The public has access to all the rest. And then the next slide. This is where, that's kind of short. Oh man, I can't see the, okay, thanks. There is a place where you can request a Zoom meeting. And that is something that I think most of you have taken advantage of. There is a place where, and I may be out of sequence here with Marty, so forgive me. There's a place also, where's your next arrow? Okay, would you go back one? I just do this to mess with him. The information that you really want is requesting a Zoom meeting, and you also want education fund forms, because we still have a little bit of money, a few $1,000s left in the education fund, and the criteria for getting an education fund grant from the state, from our big ed fund, is in there. And that's where you'll find, let's say you have an idea, two leagues want to get together and do a particular project that they think is going to be a benefit to their underrepresented voters in their two communities. So they might write a joint grant to ask for support for doing some kind of activity for that. So that would be an example. You can noodle around in there and see what kind of idea you might come up with to see if you can get some funding for something that you're hot to do in your local league. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to do is connect the local leagues together and connect the local leagues with the state so that we have this go in both directions kind of thing that I mentioned in the introductory video that I did. Request an insurance certificate if, Lord willing, we are ever able to be out in public again. You may want to have an event where you will need to have insurance for that event. And so that's where you get it. It's pretty straightforward. You just fill out the form and send it in. And that way you can co-sponsor things with schools and government agencies and that sort of thing. And you'll be able to find out and you'll be able to access that. I think it's $1 million, but it works for most of the leagues that have been doing events. And then finally, state board meeting minutes. And so if you want to know what really happened, that's the place that you would go. And then the next slide, Marty. Program of work planning for the league for Washington State coming up. So next year, we will decide what the state program of work will be. So that's, everybody's going to decide this. So we'll have information going out saying, what is it that we're going to undertake in the next 2 years with the state of Washington? So this is where we've had programs such as, well, but you heard it last night, the report on the different election methods. That was a program of work. That was a big project that we undertook to do. We're working on public banking right now. We've got a project going on in shorelines, a number of projects. So anyway, this is where this guy lives. And then the next slide is resources for managing your league. And that has two things that I really want to call your attention to. One of them is that we belong to two organizations. One is Washington Nonprofits, and wherever you are based, if you ever get out of your house again, they have meetings and they talk about things that have common interests for the nonprofits in your area. So that might be a place where you would want to connect with other nonprofits, because lots of times getting ideas from your own league sisters and brothers is fine, but you might want to know what some other nonprofit is doing. And so it's just a good place to connect. They also have wonderful training, and you can get a discount on that training because the state league is a member of that. The other thing, in fact, we presented it at the nonprofit conference this year. The other thing is that there is a place called Board Source that has really good information about being on a board. And so that might be something else. And because of our membership as League of Women Voters, we get a discounted opportunity to go into their resources. Somebody just asked me if $1,000 is the limit for an ed fund grant. The answer to that is no. More could be revealed. But what we like to do with those ed funds, if you pardon me for backing up a little bit, what we like to do with those ed funds is, let's say you have a really good idea, but it could be better, we think. So it's just like any other foundation. You take your idea to them and then you have somebody work with you to maybe say, well, what if we put this twist on it? Or what if we put that twist on it? We did that recently with Yakima, and Yakima had a great idea, and we said, we'd really like you to see if you can get local partners in on this. So they ended up needing less money from the league and getting a whole bunch more community partners. So it's really working with you to help develop just the best thing that you can have. So see, I do have my eye on that chat list. So there's lots of resources here, and you just need to know to go and look at it. Marty, next slide, please. Meld. This is Linda Benson queuing up for this. This is our version of how to do membership education and leadership development for our whole organization statewide. And Linda's going to take it from here for a while. Somebody's going to unmute Linda.
I just unmuted. I got it. I always forget to do that. Yes, I think the MELD program is one of the best things that we do. I got to click that off. I had something. Okay, sorry. I am not a techie. The MELD has given me, okay, I got on the board for Clallam County when I had never even been to a board meeting. We were kind of typical in some respects of some other leagues that have trouble with people being willing to be on the board. And so I jumped in, not having a clue about what was happening. And we have what we call pods. And some of you, many of you probably have already experienced this, where we have calls and we try to have a bigger league, a medium-sized league, and a smaller league in on the calls, and there's a facilitator for the call. And those calls were the best learning experience I had for being on the board. We talk about, well, you can put something on the agenda. You just have to let them know what you talk about. We can solve problems. We get guidance from the state and national league. And it's just a really good one-to-one program in a small group. And before Zoom, we did it just on the phone. And now we have Zoom, so we can actually recognize each other. What our league did this year here in Clallam County, because I also am on the state board, I got completely overloaded. And so I went to the board and I said, I can't do all of these calls. How about if we share it? And the other members of the board were thrilled. And what we did was we each took 1 month. And the way it turned out was, so I did it once and everybody else did it once. And so 6 months later, you're ready to do another one. And it was a great learning experience for the whole board, but then also people who had been reticent about stepping forward to be an officer, after being on the MELD calls, started getting more comfortable. So it really is leadership development. It's education, certainly, but it's leadership development as well. So lots and lots of opportunities through those MELD contacts. Did you want me to say more about that, Linnell?
I was hoping that you would say maybe what the commitment is and whether one of the things that I do is the president's call. So it was really advantageous for you to have other board members on the MELD call because it sort of spread out the information.
Mm-hmm. And it's once a month. The calls are once a month. So it isn't like it's a daily thing that you have to deal with, but I know it wasn't set up that way at the beginning. It was set up so that the same person would do the MELD calls, I think, but it just wasn't possible for us. So we did it differently and it ended up really working well for us. And everybody on the board got more comfortable with our connection with the state, particularly. So it was very helpful in every respect. As a matter of fact, I was just looking at it's a review for me too, what Linnell has been talking about. And I think one of the things that I struggle with the most on the board is the financial aspect and budgets. Math is not my thing. And I'm trainable, but it isn't easy for me. So I'm thinking maybe we should have MELD calls and have all the treasurers on, or make it more specific. Everybody who's a secretary, let's have some counseling sessions for the secretary or vice president. So it has lots and lots of potential. And we would welcome ideas from anybody who has an idea of what would be helpful, because the reason for it, the whole reason for it, is to be helpful for the local leagues.
Thank you. And what you said, I think, was really valuable, because you said, well, the way that it was set up isn't the way that it worked for us, so we're doing it differently. And you know, that's the good news and the bad news about the League of Women Voters, is that if you are nonpartisan and you want democracy to work, then you're good to go. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but so often we say, well, here's the job description, and if you say, here's the job description, you have to do it exactly this way. I know lots of people who will say, no, I just can't do it that way. I need to do it a different way. And we have, I mean, I can name handfuls of people who serve beautifully and do a great job, and they do it, I don't want to quote Frank Sinatra here, but they do it with their own character, and that's just a wonderful thing. And there are some people who sort of overemphasize the league way. I'm never sure what that is. I think the league way is to figure it out as you go along. As near as I can tell, that's how it's been in the umpteen decades that I've been around. It's like, well, let's just figure this out. That's what we're doing right now. So I think we're ready to go back to the thrilling website. Thanks for that, Meld. And I see some shout outs. Here's the Education Fund. Projects and resources. Let's see. Coming up, I think. There, I thought that slide was in there. Back up. That's who's in what pod right now. Now that may change, but that's how they're organized right now.
I'm curious, and you could just type it in. Are there people here on this call who have not heard about MELD? Just kind of jot a little note, and then we'll have an idea of who we need to maybe do some more follow-up with.
No salesman will call.
No, it'll just be an email.
Okay, good enough. We'll keep watching the chat. I'll take that next slide, Marty, thanks. So education projects, this is where we talked about the places, those forms where you can do a project approval, or you can get money back for your TRY to withdrawal request, PMPs to be funded, this kind of thing. Now, there's two things to remember. Why does the state have anything to do with you taking your own money out of the state bank account? We do that because the service we provide, the royal we, actually it's Myra Howery, who's, shout out to her. Myra, the Ed Fund treasurer, files a 990, which is the IRS form that says you did everything right, and we know it. And so that your treasurer doesn't have to do that, the state does it for you if you bank with us. And so that's why the state ends up kind of messing with your business. And that's where you can get civic education grants and that sort of thing. So that's a place that you'll want to go visit again. And the council and convention information, that's the next slide that we have coming up. And this is just history. This is just history. So the point I made earlier, you know, we've done this before, and frequently we are so busy doing it that we don't leave great historic records, but sometimes, like, I'll find out in 2012 they did this, and they have forms and everything. So it's a good place to noodle around, and you can find this in your own organization too. I am looking at the chat, and I think some of the pods may be changing, and I see that Catherine is putting in who the pod facilitators are, and I think that may, I'm not sure exactly how solid that is, but Thanks for that. And Ann Murphy wants me to mention that the handbook at the top of the Ed Fund list has important information. Yes, all of this is important information. But that handbook really does help you understand some of the Ed Fund things. The next slide is This Week in League Archive, and it shows up on some browsers and it does not show up on other browsers. But this is what we hope that you, and we includes Leah Gallanter, who is just really a great copy editor, and she does our social media too. This is where we hope you tell us about what you're doing and what is important to you. And it's been a lot of fun. We've carried, pictures of what you're doing locally and what's been important to you and events that you've had and thoughts that you've had. So This Week in League is something that we'll continue doing. We're probably getting ready to do a little survey about who's reading, what do they want to read. Sometimes we think that maybe we're giving too much information, sometimes not enough information, but this typically comes out 3 times a week, and in each one it says how to put your information into it, as well as what the calendar of events is in coming up, so that you can kind of get a sense of if the office is going to be closed or if something big is coming up. So that has a calendar which is going to be central, I think, to your success as a board member in your local league. The other publication that we have is The Voter, and that's one I talked about earlier, which The Voter at the state level is free to anybody. And so they can get that once a month to get information about what we're doing that is more public in nature. So, resources for managing your league. We've been at this 100 years, and we've thought about that many times. Marty, go ahead, please. The last thing that I want to talk about, and this really is a blaze through, and I'm hoping to get some questions, and we can go back and take more time rather than this just blazing run through of things. I wanted to say first that it's really helpful to have working agreements with your board. How do you want to work together, and how do you want to resolve conflict? Because if you don't have conflicts about something, probably you're unusual, because people will think about, oh, I think we should do it this way. No, I think I should do it that way. And I think that the league provides a really wonderful model, because the consensus model is to keep talking to each other until you come to some kind of understanding and agreement. And I will tell you that I've spent a lot of my professional life in conflict resolution, not my domestic life, but my professional life is in conflict resolution. And sometimes you just disagree and you have to decide, are we going to do this way or that way? And one of the challenges of leadership is you take the hit on that, because not everybody, obviously, if it's a conflict, is going to agree. And I'm not saying that the leader makes that decision necessarily, but whatever you do, if you want 2 or 4, if it's going to be 4, the 2s may be unhappy. Making that decision is going to be a challenge. So I think that only about 15% of the conflicts that we have are actually those kind of disagreements. 85% of what we think we're in conflict over is just a misunderstanding. Oh, that's what you meant. You wanted to go on vacation. You didn't care where it was. It didn't mean that you didn't care about me, that you were going on vacation. That kind of craziness that happens to people when they just misunderstand. Communication is a great way to resolve those kinds of difficulties. So make sure that in your working agreements, like identify how you're going to resolve conflicts. And most of those things really and truly will be just communication differences. It may be, whether you're going to meet on Zoom or not. It may be how you manage your resources, but working agreements, I think going around the room and saying, this is really important to me, is a really helpful way to make those working agreements, just to get to know each other. The second pitch, this is my, I really try to live with this. There are people, and there are ideas, and there are things. People, if you're going to talk about them, need to know that's your opinion. People need to be talked to personally. So if I say something about Linda Benson, Linda already knows what I have to say about her. And that avoids a lot of talking behind someone's back. So that it doesn't come back to bite you, that somebody misheard something. So Linda will not be surprised when she hears that. Who knows? I usually think she does a great job. but really, so that if we have a disagreement about something, she knows that I've already shared that with her, and only her, not with a group of people, not an email, not with a reply all, but with her individually. And I think that sort of housekeeping, that personal relationship is really something that works well with people, because they never wonder how you feel about something. The other is ideas. I think you can talk about ideas anytime, anywhere. The things, I think you can talk about things anytime, anywhere. But I really think that people either have to be in the room or know what you're talking about. So that has been helpful for me. I referred earlier to taking the heat. If somebody wants 4 and somebody else wants 2 and you side with the 2s, the 4s will not be necessarily happy. And there will be times when, as much as you know that you are a wonderful human being, you're just going to make some people mad. And that's your job, because you're in leadership now. Another thing that I would suggest to you is to let issues ripen. You may want to move really fast on something because that's your thing. And it could be that you have to wait until other people see that it's an important thing to move on. And that would be a suggestion that I would give to you, because if you rushed, you're not leading if you're so far across the field that they can't see you. Another suggestion is to give it back. I try to do that. And what I mean by give it back is, if someone looks to me for an answer, I try to go to the person whose responsibility it is to make that decision. And I make lots of decisions, but I really try to say, that's a decision that the council committee should make, not me. And because you're a leader, people will look to you and say, well, what should we do about this? And so you're really fostering leadership in your whole organization if you, in fact, give it back to the people who have that particular interest. The other thing that, that I would say is that there is no end of things people think you should be doing as the leader. And it is easy to get lost, because we probably have 50 things that we track on a daily basis of what's happening with energy and what's happening with race and what's happening with something else. And we have all these issues to take care of, and we have all these relationships. So it gets pretty big. And if you don't learn to give some of that back, you will get lost. And then I think at the end of your term, or at the end of 2 months, you will forget what it was that you came into this position to do. And I think everybody who has a position in league has some idea of purpose. Like, I really want to do something about wetlands, or I really want to do something about the League of Women Voters of Washington embracing technology so that they can move forward. So do the immediate things, but every once in a while, lock yourself in your closet with a flashlight and a piece of paper and a tablet and write down, now, where was I going when I got derailed in the basement? And really do that for yourself. And people will be critical, and buck up, buck up. And finally, don't lose your heart, because there are some of these things that are so important, so important. And, you know, sometimes it takes more than a generation for them to ripen. And we have 100 years of people working for things that are really, really important. And sometimes when the universe says no, the universe is just trying to figure out if you're serious. You know, do you really want that? Well, okay, back up. So those are some of the things that that I would suggest that you hang on to as you go forward. And now I think I would really appreciate it if we could have some comments from our participants. This is a reminder.
Yeah,
This
I
is,
was, oh, sorry.
go ahead. One of the things that we've noticed with Marty is that he's got so much stuff loaded on his system that sometimes it doesn't go forward at the right time. So
Yeah, actually, it was something that just flashed up was on my mind, but I was looking at the chat box, and Catherine Murphy, who is the facilitator for MELD, did write in there. There was a request for people who were leaders of the MELD pods, and Catherine has added that in the chat box for those of you who are interested in that. And someone really appreciated the fact that you made the point, Linnell, that there is a league way, but if it doesn't work for you, you figure out something else. As long as you stay, you stay nonpartisan, that's the area that's not negotiable. That's the only thing there, really. I mean, it was like the MELD thing wasn't working for me as president. And so we figured it out locally, how it would work and how we could still benefit from the program. And then just the other thing before I stop, and hopefully people will ask more questions. Marty had the slide up. One of the things, if you're on the board or you're a leader, is to be able to really facilitate a functional, efficient meeting and deal with difficult people, because they will be there. So you might want to tune in on, thank you, June 2nd. I didn't know the date. It's Tuesday at 6:30. I'm going to do a session on that, giving you some ideas about facilitating a meeting and what Linnell referred to, words that are good to use and words that are not good to use. And you'll have some practice and process time on that. And hopefully that's helpful for you as a leader.
I'm going to ask we have some great league presidents, local league presidents in the room, and I'm going to call on Lenny because I see her smiling at me. Just give us some thoughts that you have about leadership. And I don't know if I can unmute you. I can't unmute you. I think Marty has to do that. There he goes.
Okay. Yeah, everyone can unmute themselves now.
Great, thanks,
Okay.
Marty.
Gosh, I guess I'm entering my second year as a co-president, and I guess the thing that I have found really great about being engaged with the leadership piece is that you think all the time about the program that you're working on, the work that you're doing, in terms of who are the people who could be resources for us? Who should we talk to and see, gee, would so-and-so like to do this? And so I think the biggest thing about leadership is knowing your membership as well as you can. And that's a big challenge for us because our membership has grown astronomically in the last couple of years. And I think it's the one thing that makes the biggest difference is if somebody is able to help with something and you encourage them to step up and work on a committee. We have a lot of committees. So I'm a big fan of committees. We have 4 units with a league of 203 members. It'd be really tough if we didn't have units. So those are just kind of the takeaways, is to from what I've learned in a year is that it really helps to know your people and to be able to break things into smaller pieces, committee tasks. The unit leaders do a lot of our communication for us. And that's been really, really good for me.
We have a couple of other people. Somebody asked, I think it was Dolores asked where she could get a copy of a working agreement. And I can make it available on our website here. I see Wendy.
Lynn McGinn has her hand up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Lynn McGinn has her hand up.
Okay, let me hear from Wendy Sanderson, because I think she just unmuted, and then we'll pick up Lynn. How about that? Thank you.
And I too would be really interested in the board working agreement. As a community mediator, there are a lot of ways that you can frame things, but what is so important is setting expectations ahead of time. So before you run into those conflicts, to have everybody's agreement about how you're gonna manage those. So I think it's a great.
I want to say also on working with community meetings, and Ann Murphy and I did a community meeting. It was actually the community meeting from hell, and it lasted months. And one of the things that was really clear was that the working agreements have to come from that group. And that's just good practice anywhere. And that was one of the reasons why I was concerned when the league wanted to take a strong stand on civic engagement, rules that how we're going to behave in meetings. It really has to be the people, it has to be their work, so I think that that's kind of an important piece. But so having somebody else's model, very interesting, but it's more important for the group to kind of say, well, this is how we think we're going to operate. And sometimes that's a pretty organic process, but yeah, I can supply some ideas about what's on that. Be happy to. Lynn McGinn from beautiful Spokane.
Well, I just wanted to add from the past, back in the early 80s, we had discussions on Roe v. Wade, and I was one of the facilitators. I went to other, like we used to have our meetings in people's homes. So I would facilitate discussion on Roe v. Wade, and mostly it was like 12 to 20 people in a house. So one of the ground rules was that you listen to everyone, and we gave everyone a chance to speak if they wanted to. And we had questions, and we ended up with National taking the stance on this was a right to privacy. But the learning for even myself as a young person on what was in that issue for people, women, and like I even ended up speaking with my mother and found out that in the past, women couldn't even have a hysterectomy without the signature of their husbands. And then around marriage, and I wasn't married, I just learned so much about people's lives and marriage. So sometimes, like, we really need to allow the discussion to be there and not comment on each person's part of that, but have a listening. And that helps us get to a place where we can start to see where we can resonate for an action on something. And that's what I wanted to add. In our past, I can't believe how we came out on that we just weren't all fighting, because we had all kinds of sides, every kind of religion and every kind of idea on this. So I just really think even in our past, we've had really hard issues. And even today, when we look at elections, people vote only on abortion issues. They don't, on the national, it's that one issue that they decide how to vote. So we really need to have some way for people to come into meetings and discuss really hard topics and not go home mad, but that they were listened to by our group. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We are a great convener. Some of you may have heard me say when we were visiting with the Spokesman Review and KHQ Television, and they were getting ready to, they'll be broadcasting our forums, and they will, KHQ will host on their website all the recordings of all the forums that we do statewide. And one of the members of the state committee said, so what's this going to cost? And the answer was nothing. And he couldn't believe that the answer was nothing. And the KHQ news director said, League of Women Voters is blue chip. We're pleased to do it. That's something. That's really,
Wow.
I see.
Linnell, there's a question that came in about how we maintain, let me see here. Let me look at
Is
it.
it difficult to stay nonpartisan in your daily life?
Yes, and I just wanted to say that we have a whole session on that, and it's Our Credibility is All We Have with Judy Davis, and that's at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. Should be a really good discussion, and then we also have a follow-up. We'll get information, but then also have a follow-up from the marketplace on June 7th. So it is a good topic that we all need to talk about.
And I'm going to pick that up as soon as I hear from Vicki.
Whose mind wandered? What do you want to hear?
But tell us about life as a local league president, and what suggestions and advice do you have for people, the task side and the relationship side?
Well, I'm not sure that, well, no, I do have something to say. When we were meeting in person until March, we met at the local PUD, Power Utility District, I guess it stands for. And they had a little lunchroom. So a lot of people would stay after and, you know, just casually talk and have lunch together. And we've done that sort of thing with a lot of our committees too, because we have several committees that are very active. And I think that's been really important for getting to know each other. I feel really lucky in general though, because I've had a really nice board. Really, nobody has been at all difficult, and it's been really pretty easy to run meetings. So also our projector that we got this year has helped a lot when we were meeting in person. And of course I can do kind of the same thing with share screen. Mm-hmm. So we've even, you know, like rewritten a policy together by projecting it and editing it together. So, yeah.
That is a huge work. That is a huge work. I'm going to tell you how I think I stay nonpartisan. I don't believe in my heart of hearts, and I don't think the League did either in 1922, that either party or any party is the answer to good public policy. And I think that some of the worst legislation has been passed by people who would surprise you. And some of the best legislation has been passed by people who would surprise you. So for me, being nonpartisan is just, it's not that I'm anti-parties, it's just that I'm really pro good public policy. The advantage of being on the League board, when my Republican and Democrat friends come by and ask for donations, I say, you know, I just can't have anything to do with that because I am on the League of Women Voters Board of Directors. And so I take all the money that I would give to candidates and I give it to the League, and it works out really well for me. It doesn't work out so well for them, but that's simply how I handle it. And I'd be curious how other people might handle it also. Maybe Linda, you want to jump in here.
It's a tough one, and we do have to be careful. Words matter, and especially if we're on the board and if we're speaking for the League, Our bylaws say the only two people, the only person who speaks for the league is the president. And then the other person who has to not speak publicly is the chair of voter services, because that has to be completely viewed as nonpartisan. And image matters. It really does. And it is a tricky thing in this day and age. So I don't know that there's a magic answer. I'm certainly going to be attending Judy Goldberg's session because I want to hear what she has to say as well. I don't have a magic answer.
You mean Judy Davis?
Judy Davis.
Judy Goldberg
I
probably-
have done that more than once. I apologize.
I
It
know,
is.
it's like a little tick that you have.
Yes, it really is. I keep saying that. It is Judy Davis, but it's 7 p.m. on Wednesday. It should be
Yeah.
a really good session.
Yeah, it will be. It will be a good session, and we have some good people thinking about this a lot. I'd like to hear from some people who are new to their board. So could I see a hand or two?
Karen Crowley has her hand up. I don't know if she qualifies for that criteria, but
I don't know. Let's hear from her.
Hello. I'm assuming you can hear me. Well,
Yes.
I have a sort of an interesting question. I've been on the board a year at this point. But I'm curious about when you talk about the bipartisan issue, if anyone has had this issue. My husband is a city councilman, and he will be rerunning for office next year. So have any of you navigated the issue of having a family member who is running for office? And I would assume that would mean, you know, in the past, I've been his treasurer and worked on his campaign. It sounds as if that's not possible for me now, but I'm wondering if anyone's navigated those waters.
What is your role, and is it a partisan position?
Well, I'm on our board of directors, and I am the president-elect for the year for next year. So it sounds to me like I'm not allowed to.
Sounds like you need to look at your bylaws.
Yeah, and I will talk with that, but I'm wondering how folks in general, if
I
folks
think
have
Beth-
navigated that, threaded that needle.
Beth could maybe make a mention about that. Someone asked, are board members not allowed to contribute to candidates? Not board members. I mean, we're not talking about all board members throughout the state of Washington.
So I perhaps could respond to Karen's question.
Oh, thanks, Beth.
So I was board president this year in the Spokane League, and I just stepped down in May. My son is running for state treasurer, so that's a statewide position. So it's very hard to imagine being president of a league and having the last name is Pellicciati. You can see that. Not some name recognition that you are definitely supporting one candidate over the other. So I understand the kind of challenge that you're facing, but I don't think as board president you really don't have too much leeway on that.
Yep. So the answer that I hear is make no comment.
What about issues in general? Through no fault of their own, it seems that issues have taken on a partisan flavor, even when they're not. There's nothing partisan about saving the planet, but it is a partisan issue. How do we go about navigating that thin line there without presuming to speak for the board or the league about what it is we believe in?
I think that you can speak about what you believe in and saving the planet. It's like not all the Republicans are going to be saved and the Democrats are not, and vice versa. I mean, it really is a public policy issue. I think one of the places where sometimes people make a mistake is using language to describe the issue that is the language of a particular political persuasion. And so I really like to mess with the language and the messaging because I think that's interesting. I was with some legislators during lobby day, and the argument that was used for one case, I could then apply to a case that the legislator did not agree with, but it was the same logic, and it was really quite refreshing for me to be able to do that.
Excuse me,
And
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt just a second. We had someone ask if we could put it, the view so that this person who's talking comes forward, and you can do that yourself. Just go up to your upper right-hand corner, and you can change the view yourself.
And so
Whoever was asking that must have on gallery view, and you could switch it and make it speaker view.
You need to take it off the share screen though.
right.
I can take it off shared screen.
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
do that for us? Sorry, this is a good discussion, but I wanted to answer that question for whoever was asking that. There we go. So now we've got speaker view. Good. Okay, I'm sorry, Linnell, go ahead.
No.
We don't have the subtitles now, but I think Ann Murphy had her hand up.
Ann wants to say something.
Well, I just noticed someone asked about city council members, and it would be true for school board members. Yes, they do not run under a party banner, but remember, to the league, nonpartisan means we do not support a candidate or a party. And so it doesn't matter that they're nonpartisan in the race. We don't support a
You want
candidate.
to take my,
And the other piece that I wanted to take note of, as we're talking about who can do what in relationship to candidates, every board needs to thoroughly review their nonpartisan policy, because each level of league has a different policy, and you have to do what's working for you on that policy. And then maybe it's getting to the point, if you choose to do leadership in league, that does mean, as Linnell was talking about, you look at the language, you walk that line, and that's a choice you make for whatever period in your life that you want to be a lead leader, and then maybe you go be a party leader or a candidate supporter. And so you just do different things at different times.
I really want to double down on what Ann is saying, because I ran for a partisan office. I lost, thank goodness. But I just want you to know, because I thought, I'm forever telling people they should run for office. So I thought, well, okay, take your own medicine. But so there are times when you decide to be a political party person and times when you're not. So, we have decades to work this stuff out. But so thanks for that.
So my best bet right now would be I'm phone banking for a couple of candidates for our legislative district. So my best thing to do right now would just be to politely decline to do that.
Would be what?
To politely decline to do that for them.
To phone bank, yes. Or we had somebody who was a lobbyist, a volunteer lobbyist for a nonprofit organization, and she was on board, and she opted to resign from the board. And we had somebody who was a PCO, and they opted to resign from the board. And it was really sad because they were really good people, but we all make our own choices. And that's one of the great things about the league, is that they really do, you get to make some choices, and you have a long time to go in and out of the different roles.
Can I bring something up?
Sure.
I think that one of the things that also should be said about the nonpartisan, especially when it's regarding a position that's not a party position, that's supposed to be a nonpartisan position, that I think we need to be really sensitive about public perception, even though it says nonpartisan, and in your community, the public's perception of a candidate or the public's perception of a group or whatever is specific to a party. I think as the league, you really have to be cognizant of that as well. Public perception is important.
Linnell, there was also a comment about being cognizant of what you post on social media. And I think that's something that, you know, is maybe we don't think about that as being, you know, taking a partisan position, but very often it is.
Well, and there's a challenge there, and it was interesting in the social media conversation because if I on my league Facebook I'm, you know, pure as the driven snow, but on my personal one I'm ranting about somebody who's a SOB. Like, how does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what do we want to say about that? Another mystery to be sorted out, because you don't want to deprive people of their First Amendment rights. On the other hand, just for a little while, maybe you might want to phrase things differently. I would love to hear from Linnea Hertz. I always love to hear from Linnea because she is one of, there's a few people that I go to and say, well, this is a mess. What do you think? Linnea is one of them. And she has been a president of every kind, and recently was the lion tamer for the elections methods study report, which was so fun. Linnea, would you unmute yourself and enlighten us with your experience?
Unfortunately, it was can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
It was a moment in which I was admiring Raylene Gold's hair, and I sort of lost track.
No, it's getting longer, isn't it?
Well, hers doesn't ever get in her face. Anyway, I'm terribly sorry. This is not a good time to ask me. It's kind of late in the day. I'm embarrassed.
Oh, well, see how that is. I just thought you might have some ideas about people coming into board positions and maybe some pointers.
Okay. Actually, I can speak to that a moment. One of the things is you can be on a board if you're one of the private people on the board and still do some other things. Or you can be part of, for instance, 411 of the Voter's Guide. If you're a private person and you can be active in politics, you cannot be the president or the voter service person or some of the other public people on the board and still work politically. That's the way that we dealt with it the various times I've been on various boards, if that makes any sense. Obviously, you don't ever back a candidate, but Gary in Whatcom County, if his board job is a private kind of thing where he's just doing, well, let me think about this, treasurer or membership, the kinds of things that don't ever get public, he could still, if that's the way it's set up in Whatcom County, he could still do phone banking.
And Linnea, I have a question about that then. We came up with a little bit of a conflict because we want to encourage women to run for offices. So that's kind of, everybody knows that. I mean, that's what we do. We want to promote women to run for public office. So then when women are running for public office, it is assumed that we automatically support the woman.
Oh,
and it's a line there. So what do you suggest
Ever seen
about
a
that?
bad woman?
Right. I mean,
how about if two of them are running? Which one are you going to choose?
That's right.
No, it's just, I mean, you can be for this general policy, and you can even do training for women who want to run for office. That's something that's been done in the past. But there's no assumption, there should never be an assumption that you are therefore going to back the person who does run.
Yeah, it's just a perception that people will get.
Yeah, they get a lot of perceptions about us.
Yes.
Maybe the league should investigate supporting the idea of doing away with political parties, period, and then nothing is partisan.
Somehow,
Don't have
that's not how we could spend our time best.
Maybe you can propose that as a program of work.
I think for those of you who may have attended yesterday, the alternative voting methods, and the league does support studying that and reviewing that. Some of those have the potential to take some of the vitriol from partisanship out, and it is something that the league is investigating and studying, or no official study. I have to be careful with my words. We're reviewing, and it is a way, though, to some of the alternative voting methods is a way to take some of the partisanship out of politics.
We have good positions. We don't need to study. We just need to know what was going on, what the possibilities are now, which is why we did the review.
Right.
And we can back a variety of ways, as long as we can educate the public about what the pros and cons are of each one and things like that.
And I say that the reason I think that the league exists is because early women found that the party system did not work for a lot of the issues at all for them. And so they created this so that they could come together. And I think that we have to make it an implicit goal for all of us to come together and really listen, regardless of party affiliation or non-affiliation, because there are people in league like Linnell that is nonpartisan, and really have a listening of their ideas and their thoughts. And maybe, because it does change you to listen if you can really listen and give. That's what really our strength is. I feel like sometimes more recently, because of the problems with the two parties, even league, I've heard, there's too many Democrats in league now. We'll have to get some more Republicans in so we can even out the discussion, which I'm going, yeah, well, bring them in, I think more and the discussion helps all of us. And so, and getting to consensus on an issue is really important. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Do we have a couple of other comments? Adele, are you saying something to us?
Lynn McGinn had her hand up.
Well, that was Lynn.
That was Lynn, excuse me, yes.
Adele is muted.
Somebody just typed in, never met a bad woman.
That was Adele.
Oh, well. You need to get out more.
Okay. One of the things that I want to point out about the conversation that we're having right now is that league members are a huge resource, and that's why we need to know each other across the state, because I can go to the program in action, and I can go to the policies and procedures, and I can go to the bylaws, and I can know what the rules are, but sometimes you just need someone to work out, what should we do in this situation? And some of the women that you've heard from, I think would be great people for you to connect with. We have a roster, you can connect with them, you'll know who they are. Me, other people, and just say, help me think through what the best thing to do here is. Ann and I, in the Facilitation from Hell program, were being, I would gently call it, really trashed on Facebook, and it was awful. And they had like hundreds of followers, and we were just very nice people trying to facilitate that. And so we spent a lot of time just thinking about, there's no rule about this, but what should we do? And what's our best strategy? And should we say something? And should we, hire a hitman? Or should we, how are we going to work this out? And it was very, very helpful just to be able to have a conversation about, what's the impact of this? And should we recognize it or whatever? So I really encourage you, in addition to going to your rules and regulations, to really find some people that you trust, that you can talk to about these matters. The other thing that I would suggest you do, find someone that you trust that you can talk to about the league who's not a league member, so that you can say when your board is driving you crazy, or when your membership is driving you crazy, or when the state is driving you crazy, you can say, you know, this just is, I just need to vent a little here. And so I would suggest that you not do that with a family member, not do that with a league member, but find somebody that you can just sort of walk and talk with. So that would be another suggestion that I would have. We have a few more minutes, I think, for some comments, and I wonder if we have somebody who wants to share. Maybe Sylvia is from Spokane. I see her. You know, this is sort of like bingo, you know. It's like, okay, I have a straight run. And Sylvia is a new co-president from Spokane. Welcome. Can you unmute yourself and tell me what your big concerns are?
Well, yeah, so this is, I'm actually really excited about being in this position. And I have, being mentored by Anne, I just am the luckiest person on the planet because I'm going to be able to learn so much in a very, very quickly. I already have. I have a whole list of questions for her following this presentation. But yeah, I'm very impressed with the way the council is going. I think that having this many people in each of the sessions and having this opportunity to learn and to just learn so many details in a short period of time, it's just fabulous. And just looking forward to great growth in our, in the Spokane League, and connecting and learning more about the state and the national, because I know painfully little about the national. So that's the other thing that I have to, get my, pull my, big girl panties on and get out there and learn lots more about the league. So yeah.
Someone wants to know about your birds.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm sorry. I have to admit that I follow explore.org, and I'm now following an owlet. It's a great.
Oh, an owlet.
So, yes, and it's just getting ready to fledge. So Sylvia, along with hundreds of other people around the world, are being anxious parents. So that was what you were hearing.
And it sounds like it's just learning to talk as well.
Oh, it's really noisy. Yes, this little guy is really noisy. So yeah.
Okay, good enough. I see Polly Parton from Benton Franklin, and I haven't seen you for so long. Tell us what you're doing in Benton Franklin. We haven't heard from Benton Franklin.
Well, we haven't been doing a lot right now like everybody else. Beverly could probably answer to that. It's kind of difficult.
What's coming up for you?
Well, we have done, the one thing I can think of we've done that I'm involved with, and Beverly and others, we've done some one civics presentation, and only one this spring, to a high school class. That is one thing we've accomplished, and that was via Zoom. It took a little bit of learning.
Well, I think that we've got probably 1,000 people well trained on Zoom in only 3 weeks. So I think that's kind of a rock-on statement, frankly. I really do. So I'm looking for anybody else who has a neat question about, like, what's your concern, or Sylvia, what's on your Ann list, or what are you going to do next week about being a league leader that you, so one thing is, you know that you don't know it, but you know where to find it. You don't know it and you know who to call. What else? If we have any closing questions or comments, I'd love to take them.
Vicki has her hand up.
Okay. I can't see the hand. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, I think probably one of the most important things for the head of the board, the president, is to be able to delegate. you know, that to accept that we don't have to do it at all, we shouldn't do it all, and we should be able to, and that's part of where it's good to know your board and know who can do what, so you know who to turn things over with. One example we got director's insurance this year because Karen Crowley just suggested it. I don't think anybody on the board had even thought of it before, but she was really very interested in that, so I let her research it. I don't know anything about it. My eyes cross when I try to read the insurance policy, but I don't have to know that because I know she does. So, yeah.
Good advice. What else?
Can I add, this is Anne Linnell, can I add to what Vicki was just saying in terms of working with the board, and maybe sometimes thinking that you've got people working in teams, because sometimes committee seems onerous, but working on a team feels a little bit maybe more fun, maybe a little more collegial, and working on those teams. And so we're kind of working on realigning some of those things and getting lots of people working together.
Whatever you call it, working together is frequently a good thing. You will have some people who just like to take, you know, let me research, let me do just this piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that's, again, that's knowing people. But yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, Anne. If you can find one person who will work with you, that's good. I see Gary.
Yeah, I read somewhere in some of the papers that I've gotten that we will be, as new board members, introduced to or assigned a mentor. When does that happen?
That's in your own league.
Okay.
So that would be the question that you would have to ask. And then Wendy is asking, are there sample bylaws from leagues across the state that we could use for ideas to modify ours? Yes, those, and I'm not sure what the mechanics of those are, but we can make that available, or you can just email the league and ask them for a copy of their bylaws. We just shared a bunch of national bylaws stuff.
They might be already online on websites if you just, you know, go and look at some of the other people.
That's what I was thinking, Lynn, is that they might be, but I wasn't sure. And I try to make it a personal practice not to give people information that I'm not sure of. It's sort of a new thing I'm trying. Linnea's laughing at me. Okay. Yeah, I know that Amy has copies of all of the league bylaws. The question is, how do we get it to you? So
I also think that the National League has bylaws that are there.
Yeah.
For, you know, like when you're looking at putting your league together. So you might look on the national site.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I will try and cover that in my president's call. And so I'm looking for any other questions that we have.
Vanilla, I have a question. But it's really more an advocacy question. I'm wondering if the league will be commenting in any way on some of the current activities right now in the country around the very sad rioting that is going on and the search for racial rights. Is our league, is there any reason, will you be commenting in any way around, certainly Seattle is struggling right now, so what's our response?
Karen, thanks for that. And you probably tuned in late because I read a statement.
Oh, I apologize.
From that, listen, don't worry about it. The fact that we're here is sort of a miracle. But I just wanted you to know that you missed the statement that I did read that is going out, and that that it is posted also on the council site. And in fact, I just got a response from the Vice President of Diversity from one of the state universities who is going to join with me to do some work. And so we are working on this response that, and in my statement I said, sometimes we'll lead, sometimes we'll follow. And so, yeah, you can expect to see something from that, Karen.
Thank you. I was 2 minutes late, so thank you. I did miss
and National put out a lengthy statement at the national level.
Right.
I was also quite a while back talking to Anne about the National Nurses Association came out against not giving money to the World Health Organization that's going on because of the impact it would have on world health in smaller countries that have, and all of this would affect us, like on AIDS, Ebola, and this epidemic, and that we don't have, can we get a position? How can we voice ourselves in reaction to that? And I'm just letting you know that that was a concern for me. Thank you.
We do have positions that cover that, but let me tell you, this is my personal bias. Making a statement is important, but it is not nearly as significant as doing something. And so I am very interested in doing something, and whether that's walking side by side or walking behind. But for me personally, a statement is not enough. So, and there are lots of things that we can make statements about, but I think that our real value is that we're just damn hard workers. We really are. I'm seeing we're at 5:28. I would like to give a round of applause to Marty and Deanne, who have been with us low all day. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.